All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Elaine Henricks. I'm the GIS Technical Support Lead and Trainer with the Center for Agricultural Conservation Assistance Training at Penn State Extension. We're here. It's quarterly report season again, so I wanted to do another webinar. And we're going to get started on that. If you have any issues throughout the presentation, I do want you to be able to put comments in the chat. You can also put questions in the chat as we go, and we'll circle back around. We'll also have the ability to unmute at the end of the presentation if you'd like to ask questions that way. And yeah, if you have any issues about slides or volume, please just put it in the chat. All right. So first thing, as I already mentioned, my name is Elaine Henricks, and I work primarily on the ACAP GIS Reporting Tool. I also do education training at the Center for General GIS resources. I also work with Ben Moss, who's on the webinar today, and he works primarily more on GIS tool development, which I also help with primarily on the ACAP GIS Reporting Tool. So today I'm going to run through some updates about the quarterly reporting process. I'm going to go through a walkthrough of the quarterly report process to clarify any questions. I'm going to talk a little bit about 3 topics that I just presented out at the ACAP AgCon if you weren't able to make it to the session. Talk briefly about best practices for data entry, some recent updates to the reporting tool, as well as upcoming enhancements. And then we'll have questions at the end. So first things first, we made some changes to the quarterly reporting process very recently for this new quarter reporting timeframe that you're in right now. The Q1 2025 reports, the quarterly reports, were opened on April 1st. They are due April 15th. We've heard a lot of requests from districts about wanting those quarterly reports to auto open when a previous quarterly report is submitted and accepted, and we've now enabled that. So when you submit your Q1 2025 quarterly report, when the SEC accepts it, your Q2 2025 quarterly report will now open. So that is enabled in the tool right now. Something we've heard, something we've been getting to a place of enabling that based on catching up on previous quarterly reports. If you all have had to deal with paper quarterly reports in the past, getting those into the GIS tool, making sure everything's up to date. So we've just made that change, actually enabled it yesterday fully after the request. And the other portion of that update is that now you will only be able to edit a single quarterly report at once. So in chronological time frame, if you are someone who we have just a couple left that we're getting finished up for Q4 2024, those folks right now will no longer be able to see Q1 2025. It wasn't able to be submitted anyway, Q1 2025, but because there were some calculations that were getting confusing to folks based on the chronological order throughout time, as you all have been putting in these quarterly reports, we're now restricting it to just be the single earliest unaccepted quarter. And so that'll make things, although it sounds like a restriction, and it's actually going to make things easier in the future, that you will then be able to focus on the one quarterly report that needs to be submitted first. And then once that one is submitted, accepted, immediately be able to see the next quarterly report and go forward from there. We're also trying to keep you all current, and because we've gotten caught up now for the most part, and now current, and also even ahead of time now, you'll be able to start preparing for your next quarterly report before that quarter is over. So that's a big change. And again, the current Q1 2025 quarterly reports are due April 15th. Now I'm going to do a walkthrough of the quarterly report process. This is going to be a lot of information that some of you may be very familiar with. Some of you may not be familiar with. So have patience as I go through it, because it might seem like a lot of information at once. But I will also be, of course, as always, putting these slides on the ACAP tool support website so that you'll be able to review them afterwards as well. So as you all know, the quarterly report is a lot of information itself, a lot of numbers in particular, and I'm going to walk through what each field in the quarterly report means. First, we've got the 5 tabs. Income and expenses is the first tab, and I think what I would consider to be the most complicated tab, or where I get the most questions about things. We'll walk through each section of the tab first. So in program income, we have 5 fields, 4 of which are editable by you at the district. First one is the SCC advance. This represents where you will enter the total advances received from the SCC deposited into your district ACAP account this particular quarter. And these advances are usually sent once a year. The SCC replenishment is very similar, but it's actually exactly that, the replenishment, not the advance. And that is usually sent out, especially as we're getting swinging with ACAP, sent out on a more quarterly basis. And again, this is only the replenishment that you've actually received from the SCC and deposited into your account this particular quarter that we're talking about. So in this case, my example here is Q1 2025, so in between January 1st and March 31st of 2025. Next one is the interest earned. That's, again, just total interest deposited into your account, your ACAP account, this particular quarter. The next one is project returns, and this is a little bit new and an update that we've made here recently as part of some other updates to the tool. Project returns used to be a field that could be editable in the quarterly report. We've made that view only, and it is now an auto calculation of the total project returns from farmers deposited into the district ACAP account this quarter as entered into the contract editor. And I'll mention that a bit later, but we essentially clarified the process for project returns, which are where if a district pays the farmer a certain amount of money and the farmer doesn't use all that money on the project, and the farmer then needs to pay back the district the funds that were not used, that is what we call a project return, and is something that is documented within the individual contract in a new tab on the contract editor called the project returns tab. It's a pretty simple process, but it used to be in the payments tab, and we've now broken it out and also clarified the quarterly report to prevent you from having to enter it twice. Other income is the last program income field, and that is more unusual by my understanding. What I've seen, it is one of the examples that's specifically called out for that is donations to the district ACAP account in that quarter. Next, we have program expenses. These are the actual expenses that you as a district had this quarter, not just what you're anticipating, but what was actually paid out of the ACAP district bank account. First two in sort of blue, if you can see the colors, are the administrative and technical assistance expenses. Again, these have to be actually paid and have left the district ACAP account this particular quarter to be included there. The project's program expenses are also like project returns. Those are an auto calculation from all of the checks that have been paid to farmers, operators, contractors in the contract editor for all of your projects this particular quarter. The ACAP other expenses, that refers to ACAP expenses that are not associated with above categories and must also, if you have other expenses, those must be documented within the activity report for SCC approval. Now, the last thing in the program expenses that I'm going to touch on pretty briefly, I've put little gray dotted boxes around 3 of the fields that are auto-calculated fields. Those are actually placeholders right now, and they're placeholder for a potential function for mid-quarter project replenishments depending on SCC approval. So they're not being used right now. You don't need to worry about them this particular quarter. Next section in the quarterly report is the balance at the district section. This is pretty straightforward, especially now that we've got our quarterly reports only able to be edited in chronological order. You don't need to worry about the starting balance being off because the previous quarter wasn't actually accepted by the SEC yet. So that should be in a good place. One note that I did want to really touch on here and emphasize is that the ending balance at on the quarterly report in the GIS tool should match to the penny your balance in the district ACAP bank account on the last day of the quarter. If it doesn't match for some reason, please reach out to your SEC regional coordinator or to me so we can figure out why it doesn't match, because the tool is supposed to be, you know, accurate and reflecting reality. So sometimes there's been issues with like things happening, things being documented in the wrong quarter in terms of perhaps an expense was actually in a different quarter than was documented in the GIS tool, other things like that. So either correcting it on figuring out how to make the data correct in the GIS tool based on reality, or we've also had issues with miscalculations in the GIS tool previously. And that's where I come in of if the numbers, if you know your numbers are absolutely correct, then we're going to double check our calculations on our end to see if there's something that we're missing, or if there's something that didn't get entered, a project or a project return didn't get entered properly in the GIS tool. Maybe there's something we're missing there. So main point here is if your balances don't match, don't check the box that says balances verified or submit the quarterly report, because we're then going to have to, you know, come back to this later. But instead, if you see the balances don't match, reach out to your contacts at the SEC or me, and we can get them matching so that then your quarterly reports are accurate, and we don't have to go back, you know, like a quarter from now and try and figure out what happened in the past. Next section is replenishments. You are all probably at this point relatively familiar with the Harrisburg funds, 2022, 2023, 2024. Those are the initial federal ACAP funds available in Harrisburg for replenishments from the SEC to the district. All the advances have been paid out of those, which is where the allocation for each year split in half. 50% gets paid as an advance and 50% stays in Harrisburg as a replenishment fund. So you can see in this example, those funds are being drawn down by submission of the quarterly report and submission of program expenses. I was asked to note here that all three of these Harrisburg funds should be spent by June 30th, 2026, something that the SEC has been working on to make sure that we're getting moving on using up these funds before the deadline for you all at districts. The other field here that is relatively new, was added earlier this year, last year, is the Clean Stream Funds 2024, CSF Funds 2024. Those are the funds that are available from that particular state funding allocation in Harrisburg for replenishments from the SEC to the district once again. And that is right now that advance has already been paid out. So right now that that line in the quarterly report is really just the replenishments that are left. The last field in the replenishments is the amount requested. That's the amount that the district will receive for the quarter's expenses if approved by the SEC. And that's something that I'll show in the next slide. That amount requested immediately goes into, once the quarterly report is accepted, that goes into unreported replenishments for future documentation when the district receives that check. So the unreported replenishments in purple here, these are the total replenishments that have not yet been sent by the SEC or received by the district. Those are the ones that have been requested in previous quarterly reports, and then the quarterly report here keeps track of those to know when you're getting the checks that the numbers are correct. So some questions I've got I've received from districts have included about if you're allowed to submit an SEC replenishment that is less than the unreported replenishments, and that is yes. That's like some of these unreported replenishments can build up over time, especially as we've been getting the program up and running. That perhaps you actually have 2 quarters worth of replenishments from previous quarters that are summed here, and you've only received one of those replenishments. So from the SEC, you can still submit that initial replenishment number if it's less than the unreported replenishments. You want to make sure that it matches the previous amount requested, and all that is correct, of course, for the quarter that it was initially requested in. But you are allowed to submit not the full unreported replenishments balance all at once, because you might not have actually received the full money yet. But if the SEC replenishment up in the program income is greater than the unreported replenishments, reach out to me, and we'll figure out if there's something going wrong there in terms of the process or the GIS tool. I've seen this happen by a penny before, and then it prevents you from submitting the quarterly report, and that's then a rounding error that we can correct. It's unusual, but just a note. The other thing here in the spending status is the unreported advance. Once again, these are just the total advances that have not been sent by the SEC or received by the district. And in this case, the unreported advance, because it traditionally in the future, we're expecting to really only happen once a year, or certainly usually not more than once a quarter. If that number is greater than or less than the SEC advance, that those numbers do not match exactly, reach out to me, and we'll figure out. Once again, it's usually a penny off by a rounding error, but those should usually match exactly. Last thing in the spending status is the remaining balances. This is a good way for you all to keep track of what money you've committed and what you have left to spend. So the current balance is the total of ACAP funds at both the district and in Harrisburg. The committed remaining are funds of that current balance, funds that have been committed but not yet paid to active contracts. Uncommitted balance is of the current balance, the remaining ACAP funds not committed to active contracts. And this is a space where we wanted to particularly note that this does not account for any upcoming admin or technical assistance expenses, potential contract amendments, or future contracts that you might not have put in, you might be planning but might not have put into the GIS tool yet. So do just make sure to budget for all of those different unaccounted for future expenses in your uncommitted balance. If in this case you think you have 6,700,000 left, you're gonna have to still budget a little bit of it. It can't entirely all go to projects if you still need to be spending stuff on admin and tech assistant. All right, onto the activity report. This portion of the quarterly report is something where I've received minimal questions, so I'm going to run through it pretty quick. You're really just entering the relevant numbers for this particular quarter. It resets each quarter, and if you have any questions about what these categories are or what should be included, please reach out to your SEC regional coordinator. Similarly, the section below the numbers section is a text box that you can either fill out the text box or check the none text box if you happen to have not done any of those particular activities this quarter. And these are also pretty well described, and if you have questions, let us know. Similar here. And then at the very end of this form, one of the things I just want to note is this is where you list the other expenses and why they don't fit into the other categories that were in the income and expenses tab. So the labor report is again a relatively short form, but I was asked to make sure to emphasize to you all that this is one where the labor report autofills from the previous quarter, and you do need to make sure that these numbers are either up to date or that you fully review them and approve that they're consistent. So that checkbox, do go through the motion for this one. And if you need help, you can reach out to your SEC regional coordinator or to Eric Cromer about these questions about the labor and what prevailing wages and stuff. All right, and then I'm getting to the end of the quarterly report. The files is where you upload the documentation of expenses for the quarter, including scans of receipts. I haven't received any questions about that, but just a note of if you ever have issues, please let me know if the file upload stops working for you for some reason or whatnot. The managers tab is usually not edited quarter to quarter, but it is something I wanted to touch on a little bit because I have gotten questions about this in the past year that I've been with CACAT. And if you need to update your bank account info or you per se your like conservation district address, you can reach out to vendor services and the PA Office of Budget to make those changes. They do have to be made at the state before we can make those changes in the GIS tool. They need to have the correct information there before we say it's correct in the GIS tool. And if you do need to make those changes, please also inform your SEC regional coordinators so that they know and so that they can loop me in as needed too. The other thing in the managers tab is if you're a district manager and you need to update your signature, or if you're a new district manager, this is where you do that. It again saves quarter to quarter, but it's the little button in the top left of the managers tab, and you can directly sort of scan out your signature with a mouse. If you've completed all the tabs, you're going to both, I should say, if you, as in if you're if you're an ag tech at a district, or if you're the district manager yourself, you're able to edit most of the quarterly report, but the actual submission is restricted to the district manager or their delegate for submitting the report. You can go through the report checklist if you're the one who's done the income expenses, check that off, say, yep, that's ready to go. Same for the activity report. The balance is verified, I believe, has to be done by the district manager or their delegate, ensure that's correct. And once everything is all good and you've checked it over, then you're hitting the submit button, which is a little paper scroll with the blue arrow in the top right. After you submit, it goes to the SEC to review and make edits if needed with you, and then accept. So if corrections are needed, some of you have probably experienced already, the SEC can unlock the court for you to make edits and resubmit. Once the SEC accepts the report, they begin processing the replenishment payment check within the state government, and that's outside of the tool. When the check is actually sent to the district, the SEC documents that replenishment in the reporting tool, and you then receive an automated email. Of note here as well, you're able to view the report PDF as well as the replenishment request PDF for your documents outside of the GIS tool, those PDFs. And I also wanted to make a special note about the relatively new functionality. It's something that's been in our sort of sister GIS tool, the dirt and gravel low volume roads GIS tool, about quarterly income expenses being able to be downloaded for multiple quarters in a CSV file as a spreadsheet. That is enabled in the ACAP GIS tool now, and you're able to select the quarters. And this is especially helpful if you are experiencing discrepancies in your balances between the quarterly report in the GIS tool and your bank account. If If you have any questions about that, let us know. But that can be an extra resource for you all, as well as for the SEC as they're helping you correct any discrepancies. So overall, I think I've touched on this a few times in related to data entry for the quarterly report, but this goes for the GIS tool, that when you are entering data, making sure it's correct in the first place before you submit it really helps you in the future of, we've seen just recently a lot of things where we're going back in time and everyone is, it's harder to fix a past issue than to fix a current issue. So reach out to us as soon as you see the issues. I know that there's sometimes many ones and it's a lot to handle, but if you reach out to us, it'll get less overwhelming, hopefully. So if you have financial policies or procedure questions or areas where you want clarification, that's a good time to reach out to your SEC regional coordinator. I'm not the SEC, so I don't always, I'm not always going to be able to answer those particular questions. But if you're seeing bugs or unexpected data in the ACAP GIS reporting tool, where you're thinking something's wrong in the tool, that's a good place to reach out to me. And you can also reach out to me if you just want to know more about the steps to take in the tool. I'm going to try and hit on a couple of these points just as more best practices, that when not just when you're submitting the quarterly report, but throughout the quarter, add your payments and your new contracts to the reporting tool as you go. Just block out some time to do that because it'll make it easier when it gets to quarterly reporting time, and the SEC needs to be getting updated information in the tool as soon as possible for their reporting. For each contract's worksite address, this is entered in the contract editor contract tab. Use the pop-up map button right next to the worksite address entry field to verify the address. It'll show you a little, just like I said, a pop-up of a map that you can then confirm that that aerial imagery is the correct farm that you need to be putting there. We've seen that sometimes a missing zip code or a typo or other missing information in the address means that the worksite address is not actually the correct location. And that's really crucial for spatial data that needs to be reported to the state. Similarly, creating, editing worksite parcels are really, really important for state reporting. We're getting a place where when we added it, we're saying, oh, it's like, do it when you can. We're trying to get to a place, especially as we're working on more functionality in the tool, that we need to be getting those in. So if you have any questions about worksite addresses or worksite parcels, please feel free to reach out to me and I'll help you get those in the tool. Another point about sort of spatial location information that this SEC needs is identifying contracts with preserved farmland. You can either identify that right now when you're creating, editing a worksite, or there's a checkbox, a simple checkbox at the top of the contract editor, where you can just mark off if it does contain preserved farmland. And then once again, just like in the quarterly report, we're really emphasizing making sure the numbers and the balances are correct. That goes to for contract information. If you're seeing numbers that don't match what you have documented for a contract, like a project, reach out so we can figure out what the discrepancy is and correct it. All right, quick overview of some recent updates to the tool. One thing that we had received a lot of requests from districts was the ability to print the contract information that is entered into this, web form in the tool. You don't want to be doing work twice is a common refrain that we've heard. So we have added that. There are certain fields that are required in the contract tab in order to print the contract agreement. Those will pop up if you still need to fill those out. But what I have documented here in the screenshot is what is required, including planned BMPs. We've moved that. It was previously in the deliverables tab. We've disabled it because of some confusion. And we've re-added it here in the contract tab where you can just list the planned BMPs and their amounts. Once all of that information is in the contract tab, relatively simple, you hit the print button next to the save button, select which grantee, whether it be the operator or the owner, the total project value. You also have the ability to upload an attachment. So say you want to attach appendix to your contract agreement, or you want photos to be appended to the contract agreement, you can do that here. When you hit print, the attachment that you've uploaded will automatically go into the filled PDF of the contract at the bottom, and that will be saved in a zip file along with some other optional documents from the SEC for you to have available for that contract. This is to hopefully make your life easier for signing the contracts, and when they're signed, you can you still upload them to the files tab in the contract editor. The other thing that I mentioned previously, this is the project returns tab where we broke it off of the payments tab where it was in a button. Folks were struggling to find at times or just confused. We've seen more of these project returns, so we wanted to clarify that. So you've got the entry here. This test example I've got here has multiple project returns. They're listed there so you can see them after they do something that wasn't previously available. And again, they're auto pulled into the quarterly report for the date on which they were received by the district, the return date. Some notes on upcoming enhancements. So one thing is more ACAP GIS trainings. I've heard from that, especially from folks who are newer to the tool, that they want more hands-on trainings or one-on-one trainings. So I'm going to be putting that together as sort of more basic ACAP GIS overview training for newer employees to be available. That's coming soon. Other big things that our GIS team has been working on include the practice approval system tool. This is part of a larger program, the PASS program within ACAP that is getting up and running. If you have questions about that, definitely let us know. The gist that I'm going to share with you is just that we are putting together a tool which allows folks who are certified in PASS and have gone through trainings to be able to do a relatively simple practice sort of design that they will be able to pull in a wide variety of documents, particularly standard engineering drawings for those practices, all in sort of almost online portal to be able to edit those documents and print them, as well as then to be able to, in that portal, to draw practices on a map as part of design. That then is very, very closely tied to our best management practice drawing in the ACAP reporting tool. We're launching that with the PASS tool as we get the PASS tool up and running, because they will be communicating with each other. That practices drawn in the PASS tool will be pulled back into the ACAP reporting tool, and practices drawn in the ACAP reporting tool will be pulled into PASS. So that is coming soon. We're working on that, and my understanding is the practice approval system is launching in packages, and the first package, the grazing management package of the 6 packages, is the trainings are scheduled for June, by my understanding. You can find more information about that on the ACAP website or the CACAT website. So we're getting that up and running. That's been a big lift that our team has been working on, and more information to come on that soon as we get that launched. The other thing that we are working on and planning to launch in the near future is a public ACAP dashboard. This will be for members of the public, and particularly sort of requested by more legislators, stakeholders, to be able to see what the good work that is going on in ACAP, and which districts are doing which projects, more information about that. But at the same time, we're not going to be sharing very detailed level information because for privacy concerns. So more an overview of how spending is going over how the spending status sort of across the whole state, and information about where practices are being installed in terms of like which county is installing which practices, not which address is installing which practices. And my last real slide is just a reminder to reach out to me if you have urgent issues or just prefer to talk on the phone to solve things. You can call me. I have a work or not a work cell phone number, but a work number that rings me through my computer on Teams. That's 814-863-2312. You can also reach out to me to set up a call if you'd like, if you prefer to do a Zoom call or Teams call where we share screen and look at things together. I'm always open to that as well. You can reach out to my direct email, or you can also email the ACAP GIS support at psu.edu email address that goes to both Ben and me, as our main repository for sort of GIS tech support issues and questions. The third thing for tech support and training, a resource for you, is our support website. That's at support.agconservation.psu.edu, and that is where I upload presentations slides. So these slides will be there as a reference on quarterly report information. I also upload tutorials, step-by-step tutorials and videos there. And there's also the playground link is there for the GIS reporting tool. And that is, we have our official GIS reporting tool where you actually enter your real data. And we have a playground, which is essentially a copy of the official tool where data is not sent to the SCC, but you can, it's a resource for training. So our support website, I'm continuing to add more and more information to that. There's also frequently asked questions there. So it's a good place, a good first place if you think your issue might be common. If you think it's more a bug that other people haven't, aren't experiencing, then reach out to me so I can address it more quickly. All right, time for questions.
Currently, Elaine, there are no questions, but if anybody's interested, you can put questions in the chat or you can unmute yourself. Oh, we did just get a question. So we're not supposed to use the deliverable tab anymore?
You are supposed to use the deliverables tab still. That I bet is Ryan, was that in relation to my note about the planned BNPs? If so,
yeah, I was just looking on the several like some completed projects. As you're going through your presentation, it looked like a lot of stuff was cleared out of the deliverables tab. At least on my end.
For your completed projects?
Yeah. Like when you enter in the other public, like NRCS funding, and like you enter in material, labor, equipment, a lot of that stuff's zeroed now.
Okay, that is not supposed to be happening, so I'm gonna look into that. What conservation district are you from, Ryan?
Bucks.
Sorry?
Bucks.
Bucks. Okay.
Thanks, Ryan. You may have found a bug in the system. So Elaine will circle back to you on that. The next question is for Eric. It says, you mentioned the Harrisburg funds need spent by June of 2026. I thought the deadline was December.
So the actual out of complete end date is December 26th. But when we set up the allocations, we set them up on the fiscal years, and we give you 2 years to spend those funds on the fiscal years. The first 2 fiscal years were a little lax on that, but we set up the last fiscal year for June 30th, 2026. We do have a little bit of wiggle room there, maybe 3 months or so, because we know some of the allocations some of the advancements didn't get to you until August or so there. So we do have a little bit of wiggle room, but we need to have some wiggle room at the end of the year, so we can close everything out on our end. So it's probably going to be September complete dead cutoff for you guys to have the money spent, and then it will give us about 3 months to tie up any loose ends that we may have out there.
Thank you, Eric. Are there any other questions? Feel free to put them in the chat or unmute yourself. Well, Elaine, there's no other questions that have popped in, so we can hang around for a little bit if anybody wants to ask any questions, be here. But if not, do you got anything else?
No, I don't. Yeah, thank you all so much for listening. I know, again, as always, threw a lot of information about you. Those slides will be available on the support website. And if you have any questions, or again, you're experiencing any issues in your quarterly reporting timeframe that you're in right now, please reach out to me or your SEC regional coordinator. Yeah, thank you.